Hi, welcome to my channel where you learn about different art techniques. Today's YouTube video is about abstract series, creating with Neocolor crayons. Today I'll be using a large brush and instead of using dry crayons on dry paper, I'm wetting the paper first. I use Canson oil and acrylic paper for this. It's a fairly heavy duty paper, so it can take a lot of water. So I wet the paper first, and then I'm going in with colors. I'm using red as my first color as I'm going in. And I'm just making some random lines, having fun with it. And now I'm going in with some blue. And I'm using a paintbrush with some water on it to spread the colors around because that's what's fun about Neocolor crayons. They're water soluble, which means they once you put water on them, they can turn to watercolor. You can have a lot of fun with them. It gives you a lot of flexibility with your colors. And as you can see, the red is kind of bleeding through into the wet paper beneath it to create an interesting watercolor effect. I liked the way the blue looked when I came back in over top of the lighter blue. So I decided to carry that throughout the piece. I like to use a lot of line work in my art. And the way I hold my crayon matters because I can use, you know, either some, if the more pressure I apply, the darker it is, and the less pressure, obviously, the lighter it is. At this point, it kind of reminded me of a roller coaster at an amusement park, and it looked like a lot of fun. But as you'll see in this piece, I actually kind of got carried away with the colors. I'm using an orange color here. I'm trying to preserve some of the white space in this piece. I really love certain shapes, and I like to use a lot of curves and circles in my work, overlapping circles. It kind of reminds me of how things in our lives overlap. And I decided to work on a couple pieces at a time. That's why I called this an abstract series. Instead of just one simple abstract, I decided to work on two at a time. I completed my other one the other day, and there's already a video out about that one. I'm mostly sticking with the same color scheme and palette, so that the series of three, the one from the previous video, and then these two relate to each other. Like when you look at them, you can see that same artist worked on them and that a similar palette was used, but just created a slightly different theme or a slightly different picture. And you can tell I'm not really caring too much if the colors run together. I just want to see what kind of effect that creates. And I still love how you can see the lines beneath the water. And I'm going back to the other one because that one has mostly dried. I want to work in it dry with my black china marker. And as you can see, I'm turning it around to see what types of different perspectives I can get on how to approach the piece. Again, I'm going in with some circles and squiggly lines. And that looked like a flag to me, so I just kept going with it. My art is very intuitive. I just kind of let the flow of the piece speak to me as to what to do with it. I'm still kind of following along with the original lines beneath and using more lines here. Looking a little busy at this point. And I remember getting to this point and thinking, oh my goodness, I'm just overdoing it. And how can I scale it back? And you'll see what I do to try to scale it back a little. But I do love how the watercolor looks beneath the lines. And here I go in with colored pencil. And I bring in some more colored pencils to accentuate the lines that are already there. This art is inspired by the American artist Cy Twombly. His art was very gestural, and that's a lot of times that's how I paint, is just through gestures and movements. There's a certain pleasure or satisfying nature to working like this as an artist, for me at least. It's the pleasure in the process. I'm using acrylic white paint there, and as you can see, it picks up some of the color underneath and peeks through. I feel like at this point in the piece, it almost feels like a musical note over to the left side. And I could have left this piece as is at this point and I would have been happy with it, but I decided to go even further, of course. Putting more white in there. Try to use my white pen there. Instead, I used my black pen and went over it in colored pencil. I decided to go to the second piece and start on there. And again, I'm using white acrylic paint. I need to replace some of my paintbrushes. That the end of the brush almost fell off at that point. I had to tighten it back on. Yeah, at this point, I don't even know where the painting is taking me. Going in with the black china marker again, making my loops. And I decided to follow along with the shapes that were presenting themselves in the piece itself. That square kind of popped out at me. And there's another one there. So I'm just kind of pulling out shapes at this point. Using a red china marker there. Seems like when I unraveled the end though, the piece of the red was a little too long. I think it breaks off here in a little bit, but I still keep going. I'm not going to waste it just because it broke off. And getting ready to use the yellow China marker. Again, I have to unravel the tip there to get to use it. And I'm just making some simple flowers. I think it's interesting because some people I speak with, they really say, "Oh, I can't draw at all," and I honestly I believe that, you know, when you see something like this, first of all, some people will also say things like, "Oh, well, I could do that," or, "But can you really? Have you tried?" And then those who think they can't do anything, can you draw a circle? And then you just draw the next thing. It's a process. You do one step after another, um, living in the moment, one step after another to see where it takes you. That's how I approach my art. If it looks too simplistic to some artists, fine. I mean, this is not their art. This is not their style. I'm not a photorealistic painter or an artist like that. But this abstract art, this gives me joy, and I hope to share that joy with all of you. I admire other artists and their talents and skills. And I believe that God put each of us here with our own special gifts and talents. And I'm very happy to be alive in a time period where I'm able to not only do this art, but share it with the world. It's an amazing time to be alive. It's also quite scary at times. And I believe that art for me is like therapy. It helps beyond regular therapy, obviously. But to me, it just puts me in a flow state. And that's why you'll see a lot of my art is very happy or looks very childish or innocent. Like it, it's coming from a place of idealism, I believe, like the way you kind of wish the world was. So I, work on this art and I put it out in the world, and whoever likes it, and whoever doesn't. But I feel compelled to share it with everybody. I'm using my Posca marker now, my white Posca marker, and just putting in some lines and dashes like I like to do. Some more mark making process. Using my other colored Posca markers. Pulling out those circle shapes. Sometimes I'll add things in here and then I'm not too happy with them, but the nice thing is you can cover them up. You can move in. I'm adding a pop of color using hot pink. And it's interesting to watch these videos myself, even to see the progression of the artwork, because if I would have stopped in certain spots, it would look completely different from what it ends up being. Then I switched back to the other painting. Going in with green Posca marker. And I think when it comes to naming or labeling this type of art, I think it can be tricky because it's like, okay, is this a painting or is it just an illustration? And I don't mean just, but you know, what do you call it? Because you incorporate water and paint. Here I'm using green acrylic paint that I watered down. That's why I call myself a mixed media artist because I love mixing different types of tools and techniques all in the same piece. I love how everything is showing through that watered down color. Then I went back to this one. Using the same green, sticking with the same palette from piece to piece. Figuring out my next steps. And I went in with marker this time. I like outlining a lot of my work. Makes it highlighted even more. This piece kind of reminds me of a garden, or like garden plots. Making some more mark making. I'm making the making. And I believe my uh, video camera starts running out of um, space at this point. So you'll see, I'll show you what the end product looks like, the actual paintings at the end, but you won't see the entire process, only because my camcorder ran out of space at that point. But I just wanted to share with you at least some of my process so you get an idea of how long this can take me just for one or two pieces. And I sped these up to 300%, so you wouldn't have to watch over an hour of me working on these pieces. And of course I changed the perspective on that one as well. And there's the one. And the other one. I called the first one Day and the other one Sunny Day. Follow for more art techniques, and I'll see you soon. Thank you.